Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was created in the Entitled People subreddit by a throwaway account. The post was made in 2021 and is titled, "Deadbeat Brother Crashed My Crown Victoria. He gets a night in jail he won't forget. I, a 21-year-old male, have an older brother, Dave, who has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to beat me up when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable, so no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact that I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I wouldn't, no matter what they said. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it, so I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he'd borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now, or I'll have the police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jackass before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was going to go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away, then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone at the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dots stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon, we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled into my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious as it was formerly a car of his department, and I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough and was going to call the police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was going to pay me back for my damn car then, or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, the police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped on his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to the police. That shut my parents up, and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the things they'd seen go on there. Dave had actually pissed himself during that, and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI, just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he'd bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Edit. Okay guys, I'm kind of tired of so many griping about how my uncle broke the law by keeping my brother's DUI from ever being filed. I did not consent to that. I did not want him to do it. But by the time I found out, it was already done. My uncle isn't a bad person. He was actually a great cop who believed in people getting second chances, and he was thanked for that many times. Last year, I saw a random man recognize my uncle and thank him for putting him on the straight and narrow some years ago. My uncle also detests racism, as do I. I won't deny the cover-up of the DUI by the department was wrong, and I have no idea how they did it. But it's already done. I no longer care about that. My brother willingly paid in full for the repairs to my car, and he's keeping out of trouble. I know he could have hurt or killed someone, that much is obvious, but he didn't. My parents should have been arrested for lying to the police too, but they weren't. However, my father was arrested later anyway because he attacked a man after being called out as a narcissist, and now that situation is what is currently going on. What happened with my brother is basically done now. My father trying to cave a man's face in, I'd say, is far more important at the moment than something that happened weeks ago. I have already heard it all in the comments about police corruption, needing to get my car rekeyed or have the locks changed, or several other measures. I plan to have the locks changed or rekeyed when I can afford it, but I currently can't afford it. So in the meantime, I'm getting a kill switch and a steering wheel club. User Lithius said, "Your parents are enabling and your brother is the golden child that can't possibly do anything wrong. I'm glad he got a reality check, but your parents are a lost cause by now. Uncle sounds great." Under this comment, OP said, "Yeah, I'm already low contact with my parents. I'm sure their enabling will rebound on them one day, but for now, I've made it clear I will not lie for them." User Jeepers06. TJ said, "Sounds like you have a lot more stories to tell about your brother and your parents. They were infuriating just from the story alone. I can't imagine growing up with these people. I'm glad you have your uncle though." To this, OP said, "Yeah, I've got a lot more stories, but they are mostly just the stereotypes. My parents are the type who played favorites and then denied playing favorites to your face before being called out on it. That would make them put up an act for a while and treat me and my brother more equally, but they always went back to their old selves. When I moved out, they stopped bothering to even pretend anymore. So I stopped bothering to treat them like parents. I know their favoritism runs deep, and likely they'll give my brother everything alive or dead. My uncle is pretty much my hero though. He's made it clear I'm like the son he never had, and I intend to help take care of him into his old age." User A Little Peace and Quiet said, "Your uncle and his friends and you might save your brother's life, despite y'all's parents." I don't know if he's made statements like that before, but it sounds like the talk he got in jail hit him pretty hard. Hopefully, he realizes his parents can't protect him from everything and shapes up moving forward. User Wafer 2016 said, "Hopefully, his night in jail scared him straight. I used to help run a children's group through my church for ages 3 to 12. One day, the kids were invited to visit our local RCMP detachment and take a tour. The little ones, ages 3 to 8, got to meet one of the kitty cops and did all of the kitty cop stuff for little kids. They tried on his hat, toured the station, met some of the other constables, and got a brief talk on what to do if they were approached by strangers, etc. The older kids, ages 9 to 12, went as a group on a different day. It was a far different visit. They were given a tour, yes, but they were also taken down to the cells. They were all empty at the time. They were shown the handcuffs and other stuff. Then the constable ushered them into a cell to look around. While they were in there, he closed the door. He warned them first to give them a chance to come out if they wanted, because the doors at our station are solid steel with a tiny window about eye level to a cop. He left them in there for 15 minutes. After he opened the door, he pointed to the cement bench inside and the cuffs and manacles nearby and said, "Now, that was only 15 minutes and I let you out. I want you to know that if you break the law, we will arrest you and put you inside with the door locked." Their eyes were huge. But, this was over 20 years ago. Most are married with kids of their own, and none of them has ever gone on the wrong side of that door. A stern lesson maybe, but one that just may have saved a life. A few days later, OP gave us an update. The update is titled, "Parents were sour at me for making my brother pay me back for damaging my car. Now my father is in jail." Well, this is an update to my previous post, and this all went down yesterday. My brother promised he'd pay for the damage to my car, and he kept that promise. The body shop guy cut me a deal at a fair price for replacing the damaged front end parts on my Crown Vic. He just asked if I cared whether or not they were OEM. I told him I didn't care if they were OEM, as the car is far from new and I didn't need the bill to get too high. I'd thought that the damage was only cosmetic, but there was some minor damage the body shop will need to pull out. However, it's not frame damage and is an easy job to straighten out, they told me. There was some minor damage to the fender panels, but they said they're easy to fix, especially since I don't care that they aren't perfect. The new parts will be painted in a matching color, so that's good. My brother willingly paid cash in advance to the body shop after getting the quote from them. He seemed all too eager to hand the money over and politely bid me goodbye. I won't say how much it was, but it definitely hurt his savings, especially after the fine he had to pay for driving without a license. He wanted to get a replacement car, but he won't have one until his license suspension is over anyway. I don't know when that'll be, but I think it's going to be a good while. Anyway, my parents had given my brother a ride to the body shop, and as soon as he was out the door, they stayed and admonished me for making him spend all his money fixing my car. I imagine they were about to say something about how I should have just lent my car to him to begin with and how this all would have been prevented if I had. But something in me snapped and I cut them off. That's when it spilled out. I called them out on everything that came to mind. All of the favoritism, how they act like my brother has always been more important, how I had to move in with my uncle just to escape their unfair treatment, how they let my brother steal my car and then tried to lie to me until I threatened police, how they themselves tried to lie to police by saying I was the one driving when my brother crashed my Crown Vic, and so much more. I ended it all by saying how stupid it was that they were mad at me for making my brother pay for the damage he caused by stealing my car on Christmas Day and driving it without a license while intoxicated. By the time I finally stopped, I was nearly out of breath. My mother was crying, my father was red in the face and looked like he was about to explode. Then he just took my mother by the hand and started to walk out. But some guy I don't know who was sitting near the door blurted out, "You guys are narcissists." Well, that was enough to set my father over the edge as he started attacking the guy. My father is not a small man and he knows how to throw a punch, so he started beating the crap out of the poor guy like a mad gorilla. I yelled for the clerk to call the cops and they did. My father heard that and bolted out the door and drove off. He actually left my mother behind crying in the lobby. Police had to pick him up at home and he surprisingly cooperated when he was arrested, but he's looking at charges for assault. The guy he beat up suffered a very swollen black eye, a possible broken nose, and concussion. I was there when they were loading him into the ambulance to get him to the hospital. My mother has called me, crying and blaming herself. My uncle is saying it was about time my dad tasted some karma, and my brother is doing everything he can to stay out of it. This is not how I thought this was all going to go down. Edit holy cow. I was gone for a day and came back to over 130 messages in my inbox. Thank you all for so much support. It's just too many comments for me to reply to them all, but I am reading them. I'm glad so many understand how crappy my parents are. User Laughing's Better said, "But will your dad learn? Why is your mother pestering you about blaming herself? I am sorry you went through that." Under this comment, OP said, "My father was arrested before in his youth, but he's always had a temper, and I've seen him get into fistfights a few times as a kid. Somehow, nothing ever came of it. But he's really done it now. I have no idea how hard this will come down to him. As for my mother, I don't know if she's truly sorry or if she's just looking for validation through tears. The only one that seems to be true to himself in this matter is my brother, because he wants nothing to do with this new drama. My uncle tells me not to worry and to just let the chips fall where they will, whatever that means." User Nick is 84 said, "Well, that was unexpected turn. Your uncle is right. Let the chips fall where they may. At the very least, your father needs anger management to pay a fine and the other guy's medical bills. Whether there are further consequences is up to the courts. But your brother is getting a look into what his life can turn into if he's willing to change it now, so maybe some good will come from this mess. To this, OP said, paying for the medical bills of the guy he hurt is the least of his worries. The beating he gave that poor guy has a chance of putting him in jail for years. Plus, he's likely to get sued now, and if all that happens, I just know someone will blame me for it. Thankfully though, no one else in the family seems to be siding with my parents. The incident at Christmas when Dave took my car opened their eyes a bit, so now they're keeping their distance from my parents and brother. User DramaticPotato92 said, well, this might make me sound like a really petty and cruel person, but if I'd been you and had been called up by Mum, who was crying, saying everything was her fault. Hopefully, your brother learns from all of this. Good on you for standing up for yourself and calling them out on everything they've done, letting them know that you won't let it slide. Glad your car is getting fixed too. After another couple of days, we got a third post from OP. Well, my father is out of jail now and I'm told he looks like crap. My mother paid his bail and he came out looking nearly as beat up as the guy he attacked. Apparently, he picked a fight while in jail over the weekend and got swarmed by other people there. My uncle went with my mother when my father was let out and described to me what he looked like. He said he's got 2 black eyes, dark bruises everywhere, a fat lip, and he's missing a tooth. My uncle said he didn't try to blame anything on me. In fact, he barely talked, just got in the minivan with my mother and went home. I did manage to get in contact with the guy my father beat up. A friend of a friend knows him. I'll call him Dan for the sake of telling this. My father beat Dan up pretty badly. He's got a concussion from his head hitting the wall after taking several punches. His nose was indeed broken, he's in a neck brace, and he spent 2 days in the hospital. When I asked him what his plans were, he confirmed he is indeed going to be suing my father and has already spoken to a lawyer. I told him to do what he has to do. Beyond that, I have no details on the case. My friends and I put together a gift basket for Dan, and we each put some money into it since he's not going to be able to go to work for a while. My uncle even contributed even though he didn't have to. Dan was very thankful when we presented it to him. My mother hasn't tried to call or text me since my father was released, but my brother has told me through text that she's still been crying a bit. My father has remained pretty much silent since he got home and hardly leaves the couch. The last time my father was like this, he didn't speak to anyone for at least a week. But this situation is way worse than what made him go silent last time. User MysteriousWish8398 said, I've read all 3 of your posts and I'm sorry you had to go through this, and Dan too. Maybe there is a slim hope they will learn a lesson from this. I hope so, but I wouldn't put myself out there if I were you either. Your dad may have been due a lesson, but I am never glad someone gets beaten up. I hope he recovers as well. Keep your head up and remember, none of this is your fault. Not Dan's injuries, not your father's, not your mom's sadness. A good person sees the suffering of others and wonders if they could have done something else. No, you reacted like a normal person to unbelievable treatment from your parents. Everything that has happened is on them. Don't let anything put any responsibility on you. If you are talking to your brother, you might also mention to him that he was a jerk and he was responsible for your car, but none of your parents' issues are his fault either. Good luck. I have a feeling you'll need it in the future for some time with those 2. Under this comment, OP said, Slim is better than none, but I'm not gonna hold out hope. My father needs anger management, and they all need counseling. I wasn't glad to hear the news about it either, but what I felt was more like indifference, especially after what he did to Dan. Thanks. Yeah, my brother has always been a dick, but I actually don't dislike him as much as I do my parents because they're the ones who made him that way. User Desert Dame said, litigation is a long, drawn-out process. It's criminal, so Dad's insurance company won't be involved due to the stressful nature of these things. I would suggest that you find a safe place to live in a place he doesn't know. A guy with a hair-trigger temper is capable of almost anything. I hate to give you this warning, but you never know. He will vilify you and blame you for all of this because he won't take responsibility for any of it. I would suggest counseling for you so that you can learn to deal with the aftermath of all this in a healthy, safe way. There are going to be guilt trips galore. Don't ride that train. I wish you all the best in this. User The One Fearless Falcon said, I stumbled across this story tonight, and my god, man, this whole thing has been a roller coaster ride of awful. Something tells me that a bit of your dad's soul died off in jail from the way he's acting, and I think the fact that he actively left your mom at the repair shop to get away may have shown her how little he cares about anyone but himself. Seriously though, who hides at home? Your best move here is to make sure they have zero way of getting at you, and maybe inform your brother of this as well. They may try to leech money in order to pay the fine they are about to get hit with. I only say that because for a while growing up, I let my parents, both wonderful people, have access to my bank accounts to help me learn how to budget, which could very easily turn on me. I truly hope your dad learned his lesson, but the real question is how he's going to take his incoming punishment. My heart hurts for everyone involved here, honestly, as no one is likely walking away from this in a better state than they entered in. Be careful not to get caught in the crossfire, and maybe see if you can get the keys on your Crown Vic altered so no one can pull what your brother did again. Under this comment, OP said the following: "Yeah, what my father did then didn't make any sense. It was kind of stupid to hide at home. But then again, if he had gone on the run, things would have only been worse for him. I wouldn't doubt it if he lost a piece of himself in this whole situation. I exposed him publicly, then he showed his true nature, and I'm guessing he tried to play the tough guy in jail and got whooped. Someone like him would definitely have severely wounded pride from all of that. If they do ask, I'll make it clear I'm not giving them any money. My mother might try, but I doubt my father will. He's always had pride issues, and I doubt he'd want to ask me since he probably sees me as the reason for the trouble he's going through. My uncle has made it clear that my father and brother are not to go anywhere near his home, where I also live, so I'd say I'm well defended. Only time will tell if my parents change from this. I'm hoping the court insists on counseling and anger management. It costs a lot of money to have a car rekeyed, so I'm going to get a steering wheel club lock and a hidden kill switch in the meantime." The final post was made about 4 months later. I know it's been months, but I finally have an update for everyone. The guy my father beat up is doing fine now. Other than needing to have his nose fixed, the rest of his wounds healed well. He filed a lawsuit against my parents, and my father was initially as stubborn as an ox about it and was dead set on fighting it. However, he ended up changing his mind. Why? Well, for multiple reasons. The first one being that someone broke several of the windows on my parents' minivan in the middle of the night. My uncle says that the police were pretty sure it was done with a BB gun. I guess that makes sense, but no culprit was found. My father replaced the windows on the van himself, as he's done it before, and no one has vandalized the vehicle since. But I think whoever did it may be friends or family with the guy my father beat up. The next thing was that my father was told by a lawyer that he had no chance of winning in court. There was CCTV footage, multiple witnesses, including myself, and no judge in their right mind would want to listen to my father. The last thing that made him change his mind was my mother threatening to divorce him. I guess that was enough for him to finally surrender in mediation before the lawsuit went to full court. He settled with the guy he beat up in the mechanic shop for an amount that I haven't been able to find out, as my mother won't tell me, but I'm guessing it was a lot. My father also has been forced to go to anger management as part of the agreement. I've only seen him a few times over the past few months, and it's pretty obvious he's still mad at me because he avoids looking at me and constantly looks angry. But after everything that's happened, he no longer has a way to justify his anger, not even to himself. So he just sits quietly and fumes. He's also apparently cut back on drinking a lot, probably because that's one less expense he and my mother would have to deal with. Now, on to my brother. You may all be pleased to hear that he's been working hard to mend things with me. He's moved out of our parents' house and in with a friend. He's got his license back but no car as he can't afford one yet. Instead, he's been riding a bike to get to work. His relationship with our parents is more strained now though. After a while, our father started turning his ire on my brother. He finally started blaming him for all of the trouble that happened over the holidays, and our mother had to make him calm down. He's a lot calmer now since he started going to anger management, but it's obvious he still hates me. It's not like my parents are offering to do family therapy or couples therapy with each other, and I suspect the reason why is because my father doesn't want more people telling him he's wrong. My mother, brother, and uncle all agree with that too. My father is still employed. His clientele dropped for a while, but he's back on his feet now. My mother says he wants to get a denture made at the dentist for his missing teeth. Yeah, it turns out he lost more than one tooth after getting out of jail. It was just one initially, but several of his upper teeth were already in bad shape, and he had to have several of them pulled. So he's missing 6 teeth on the upper left side of his mouth now. A lot of people in my early posts chastised my uncle for keeping my brother's DUI from getting filed, and I was on the fence about that myself. My uncle read a lot of the comments and finally, after a few months, said that he'll never do something like that again, no matter who it is. I agreed with him, and my brother knows too, so no one is ever going to expect my uncle to just fix something if they get arrested. So that's my final update, everyone. See you all later. P.S. Yes, my car is doing fine. It has a tracker and a kill switch now, and there have been no mechanical issues with it since it was repaired. This next post was made in the Entitled Parents subreddit by a user named Stuck in Your Room. The post is titled, "Been saying to my parents for years that my sister is very entitled and they've ignored it until now. My sister, 15F, has always been selfish, ever since she was a child. She would never share or do anything for anyone else, but would expect everyone to do everything for her. Obviously, as a small child, that's understandable, but she's never grown out of it. My parents have always dismissed this as just her personality. My sister has always been rude to me specifically. She demands I do things for her, make her food, pay for her things, and do this, that, and the other. But if I ask the same, she shouts at me. I don't remember the last time she's done anything for anyone out of the kindness of her heart. She just shouts. There have been times when I've been violently ill and bedridden due to a chronic illness, and I asked her if she could get me water, and she shouted at me even though I make her food and drinks multiple times a day, because if I don't, she just won't eat. She's also rude about everything. Anytime someone talks to her, she has a tone or shouts. She's so difficult to have a conversation with. I say nice things and she's just rude to me, screams, and is awful. My parents say nothing, but if I dare talk half as badly as she does, I get told off. I've mentioned countless times the favoritism and how they see her as a perfect little angel. They coddle her, rarely tell her off, and have never given her discipline, yet they have always disciplined me. They've acted like I was crazy. She's so manipulative, she always plays the victim and turns my parents against me when she is in the wrong. I told my parents that one day people are going to have enough of her in the real world, and I'm going to have to cut contact if her behavior continues. And again, they didn't want to listen. They just thought it's because of sisterly love and it's normal sister behavior, not concerning behavior. Until this week, I went to a family reunion and my cousins 23M and 12M humbled her. She was displaying her normal toxic behavior. She was talking to them rudely and rolling her eyes at them as she does every day to people, and my 23-year-old cousin wasn't having it. He was like, "Listen, if you keep acting like this in the real world, you are going to get slapped, and she needs to cut her attitude." My sister would just act rude and play stupid. My 12-year-old cousin added that he always feels like she judges him because she always glares at him. Obviously, my parents couldn't deny this, and it was actually a really big wake-up call. They realized her behavior isn't just towards immediate family and isn't normal to outsiders. She would display this same behavior to people she isn't as close with, not just her parents and sister. Now my parents are telling me that I can't get her food and water, and she needs to do some things for herself. They are forcing her to be independent, and they've been actually disciplining her when she's toxic. She is not taking it well. She's been screaming at me even though it's not my fault and I haven't done anything. It's a bit late, but I'm glad they are finally putting their foot down and no longer looking at her as a perfect little angel who can do no wrong. I just hope they actually stick to it. User Rasmosis said, "So that's the same story with my big sister. She's been awful towards me ever since I was a toddler. As a teenager, it got even worse. She behaved in such an entitled manner, always keeping score and raising hell if the gifts given to her for Christmas cost less than my gifts. Lying and manipulating were second nature to her, and it didn't bother her at all. She was great at making first impressions, but she couldn't hide the true nature of her personality, and people would eventually get tired of her eternal drama and accusations. Her 20s came and went, and then her 30s. She works as a nurse and has never been able to stay in the same place for a prolonged period, so she often works as a temp nurse. Now, she's in her late 40s. I have hardly spoken with her for the last 20 years. Both our parents are now deceased, and I have no reason to stay in touch with her anymore. She's pretty upset about that. I suspect what she really wants is contact with our kids, as she has none, and the chances are slim that she will have any. My wife works in the mental health sector, and she says my sister likely could get a diagnosis of narcissistic personality personality disorder if she ever sought out a mental health professional to help her, but those with NPD rarely do. So your sister may have a similar personality, and if she does, I can offer some advice if you wish. It's never getting better, and the best way to keep sane is to go low, no contact as soon as you are able to. User glumsyrup5520 said, "It's better late than never." My sister was raised very similarly, except my parents never had a wake-up call and continued to let my sister reign terror. When our dad died, she used it as an excuse to be an even worse person. It got to the point where my sister verbally abused me every day, constantly calling me a loser, worthless, etc. My mom was depressed and did nothing. I was always very jealous and resentful of the way my sister was favored. My mom said it was because she was so hard to deal with and I was just easier. Eventually, I moved out and didn't keep in contact much with her, but I do talk to my mom multiple times a week and I get updates. My 20-year-old sister has just barely started working and hasn't been able to keep a job for more than a few months. She can't cook anything except ramen and she doesn't clean. She has almost no friends and the friends she does have are similar to her. My mom has finally started bringing down the hammer, which has led to literal mental breakdowns and screaming matches. I feel so sad and sorry for my mom, but that is what happens when you drop the ball. Tell your parents, no matter how hard it gets, don't give up on trying to make her a better person. User KKMia55 said, "Here's the thing. It is the parents' job to instill manners and civility in their child, no matter their personality. Basically, you are helping your child to be likable. They failed big time. When someone is rude or blunt, people say they are just direct or what you see is what you get. Nope, that doesn't work in the real world any more than entitlement or selfishness does. Your sister needs to learn really fast that she is basically unlikable and insufferable. Believe me, you not getting her food or water isn't going to harm her. And if they stick to it, is really good insight because that will be really hard. I wish you the best."